For once, in terms of Carlos Sainz, you absolutely have to hand it to him. Welcome back to Motorsport 101. What's the old phrase? You got to give it the old college try. Yeah.
Boy, did he give it the college try.
Got to give him that. Hi, everybody. Welcome to episode 468 of Motorsport 101. I am your friendly neighborhood host, Dre Harrison. Glad you can be with us as always. This is the first block of a triple header set of tape-ins. We are in for the long haul on this one because we have a lot of motorsport to get through over this past weekend. Some good, some bad, some harrowing, some in between.
It's been a lot fucking terrifying.
Yeah, it's been a long old weekend, an emotional roller coaster to say the least. But I can happily say one of the best F1 races we've had so far this year.
I'd
say so. This was I would say a very good F1 race. It's one of the better ones. I would say this was a fun Grand Prix. Monza has no business normally being this good, and it was a very good Italian Grand Prix, and it makes me feel a little bit better about what we're getting into here, because god damn it, Ferrari tried. They really, really tried to get a home dub. It's arguably the closest anyone's gotten to stopping Red Bull so far this season, and it still didn't come up.
Well, there was no end point in this timeline where Ferrari won this race, but damn it, they tried.
An effort was made. Right, let's go around the horn real quick. First of all, Mr. RJ O'Connell. Hello, sir. How's it going?
Well, despite what many have said about other drivers in the past on this program, there is actually one perfect 10 out of 10 in the world of Formula One.
And what is it?
It's Max Verstappen. It's the longest winning streak for an individual driver in the history of the sport. It's a clean sweep of every European round on the championship.
Just never happened. We talked to pre-war racing legend Ryan Eric King,
racing historian.
Racing historian, and it's like his eyes went wide when he went back and looked. Like, yeah, no one even did that before Formula One was Formula One.
Yeah.
Pre-World War II. Even at the height of the Silver Arrows, Alfa Romeo was always good for one BS win a year.
Yeah, back when it was called the European Championship. Literally, the European Championship, before what we called it Formula One in 1950. No one has ever clean swept Europe. I'd also love that Jason in our chat went asterisk on Baku. Debate amongst yourselves whether Baku counts as a European
Ferrari.
city.
Formula One considers it a flyaway round.
Right.
But who sanctions Azerbaijan's football federation?
I don't know.
Ooh, good question. I have to Jason, get on that.
It's UEFA.
So
okay. At the very least, they have Max Verstappen and Red Bull swept all of the 8 traditional Western to Central European rounds of a Formula One season. Oh, and also, no matter what, it's not for disputing, Max Verstappen won 10 Formula One races in a row.
The longest streak ever. And indeed, Red Bull has now won 15 consecutive Grand Prix, which wipes out the technical legitimate record.
Yeah.
I believe it was 14 from 52 to 53 done by Ferrari. It didn't count as the actual record because of the Indy 500, but let's be real, no Formula One teams actually ran that with Formula One cars.
Right. So that's Cam Buckley, by the way. Always a pleasure to have him on.
New internet router, Cam Buckley.
Yes, his internet's now 4 times better than mine. I'm extremely jealous.
I ran the speed test so for those who don't know, my room has the worst internet coverage in the house because it is across and diagonal from my internet gateway, my internet router. I'm clocking about 400 megabits per second in here.
I've got 70 in the UK, and that's pretty good for English internet, let me tell you. But yeah, it's been a lot.
But I actually ever saw what I pay for.
Right. So that's a thing. But yeah, 15 straight wins for Red Bull. 24 out of the last 25 since the regulation change in the middle of last season.
Thanks, Mercedes. Thanks, Mercedes. You're the best.
More on them later. We'll talk about some of the back and forth comments between them and Red Bull. We'll also talk a little about, of course, Ferrari and trying to stick it to the Hods. And we're going to talk a little bit about Williams as well, because we have American interest in this show. And Logan Sargeant is stinking up the joint. More on that in a bit. So all of that in the next 45 minutes or so. But in the meantime, places you can find us real quick. Our website, motorsport101.com, is where you can find us, as well as bonus content, because I also did 3 whole race reviews. 3 of them things on F1.
You were grinding that.
Oh, God. I had to juggle that. A written piece for WTF1, because I have a post-race column that Charlie grants me after every race. God bless her soul. So I've been very busy the last 2 or 3 days. Absolutely fucking rammed, but I've enjoyed every minute. So thanks to everyone who continues to read them. I do really appreciate it. So yeah, Formula 1 on Italy is in there as a race review. Obviously, MotoGP Catalunya, which is a very different sort of format if you listen or read that one. More on that in our next episode. And, of course, IndyCar and Alex Palou's coronation. One of the biggest IndyCar ones I've ever done, actually, because there was a lot of interesting stuff in there about Romain Grosjean and the Leaders' Circle, which we'll talk about more in the Portland episode. That's a very intriguing fight. There's a lot of consequences this year, more than ever, regarding that Leaders' Circle, which we'll get into. So all of the weekend's action is reviewed, and if you want extra takes from me, it's all over there on the website section. Check the blog, motorsport101.com. You can follow us on Patreon, patreon.com/motorsport101. And if you'd like to follow us on our social media, you can at motorsport_101 on Twitter. Our personal handles at Dre_WTF1, at RJ O'Connell, and at CBuckley917. You can follow us all on there. Of course, on Instagram as well, Motorsport101pod, for all our updates when new episodes drop. You can follow us on there to find out when they do. So, without further ado, let's get into the Tifosi, the Scuderia, the prancing haunts for the Italian Grand Prix.
You want to talk about haunts, or bulls haunts, or junior bulls haunts? Sometimes Yuki Tsunoda can't catch a break. Anyway, Carlos Sainz.
Give that man a hug.
Carlos Sainz won the pole for the Italian Grand Prix, and he took the fight to Red Bull almost single-handedly. He took the pole by just 13 milliseconds, and then he led the first 14 laps of the race itself. But eventually, on lap 15, he locked his front tires going on the first chicane, and eventually he would concede the lead to Max Verstappen. Verstappen would then lead reasonably comfortably to win the race by over 6 seconds over Sergio Perez, who popped back from 5th to finish 2nd. And Sainz desperately held off Leclerc to take his first podium of 2023. Before we get into just talking more about Max Verstappen's record, the significance, some of the pettiness around it, what'd you make about Ferrari's fight for the lead? Because let's be real, on this show, anytime Ferrari is the main subject of a segment, it is usually not flattering, such as the time that they forgot the tires on a pit stop for tires. That was last time.
That was literally last race.
Yeah, 1 week ago. Yeah, want to know a startling fact? Those 14 laps that Carlos Sainz led now puts him 3rd on the list of most laps led for drivers this season.
Well, who did the top 2 drive for?
Oh, I wonder.
Yeah, I mean, he gave it he was giving it all she's got, Captain. You have to respect the college try.
I can go one further. Amazingly, I think only 48 racing laps all season have been led by anybody other than a Red Bull.
Dear God.
Oscar Piastri joined the list with 1 at this past weekend. 1.
He's on the board.
He's on the board.
And Lewis Hamilton killed him for it.
Yeah, shout out to Charlie and WTF for pointing out this list. Here's the list of laps led. I'll go in reverse order so far this season. Oscar Piastri, 1. Fernando Alonso, 3. Lando Norris, 5. George Russell, 6. Lewis Hamilton, 7. By the way, this is for the whole season, not just this race, the whole season. Lewis Hamilton, arguably the greatest F1 driver that's ever walked this earth, has led 7 laps all year. 7. Charles Leclerc, 12. Carlos Sainz, 14. That was the 14 he led in this very race, which, by the way, is the most anybody has led against the Red Bull in any race so far this year. Sergio Perez, 138. Bit of a jump, safe to say. Max Verstappen, 661.
Out of a potential 847 laps, he has led. We'll do the quick calculations, but that to me reads like more than 75% of all laps. That, as a matter of fact, that's 78% of all laps run this season.
Yeah, 799 out of 847 have been led by a Red Bull.
Mother of God.
That's how dominant Red Bull has been all year.
If you thought that Carlos Sainz Jr. was a disappointment just because he was the one driver on a good team that hadn't been on the podium all year, well, he's got the podium. He's now ahead of Charles Leclerc in the driver's standings. I know Leclerc has generally been quicker all throughout the season, but Sainz hasn't been a disappointment. He's been very game. This was one of his better drives since he's come along at Ferrari, I'd say.
Probably his best, is what I would say. I mean, look, I don't necessarily condone all of his racecraft. I like to think that he had the hat trick of dirty tactics. Turning under braking, weaving, and then running somebody off the road. The holy trinity of dirty driving, in my humble opinion. But look, if you're a race steward, are you clapping Ferrari with a penalty at Monza?
No, I don't think there's...
Not if I want to make it home.
Dude, it is crazy. This might be the one weekend where everybody was pulling for a whole lot of Ferrari International assistance, if only to give us a different result.
Right, like if Ferrari gets penalized in Monza, it's going to be more interrogation for that person than watching C-SPAN. Like, it's not happening, okay? Like, it ain't happening. I mean, look, I don't want to be too harsh on Ferrari here because this was still, without question, their best weekend of the year. They qualified on pole. You know, the top 3 was within 0.06 of a second. Sainz drove as hard as I've ever seen him drive to get that podium. He earned it. No one can take that away from him. He absolutely drove as hard as he could to get that podium. That's what you want from a Ferrari driver in their own backyard. He gave it a proper effort. I still think they might have goosed Leclerc by having Sainz butcher his tyres so much by driving as hard as he did. I do worry that I think they were so obsessed and enamored in the moment of Sainz doing everything he could to delay the inevitable that they forgot their second, arguably faster driver was right behind them doing niche and just waiting for the race to come to him, and it never did. I do wonder if Leclerc might have been able to hold on for second if they had actually swapped him. But I do acknowledge there is no way on God's green earth Carlos Sainz is giving up track position at Monza. Not a chance.
That was all I mean, it was their best race of the year, but you would hope so given they brought a Monza special. Their car already is good at basically nothing but driving in a straight line and low-speed corner balance. And those are the two things you need here. And then Ferrari doubled that by cutting off all their wing. They had easily the smallest front rear wing here.
Tiny.
And then they cranked their power units up.
Oh yeah. They were faster than Red Bull in a straight line. Did we joke about
running half as much wing?
Yeah. We joke about them we call them the Honda Motor Company, and not for nothing. We joke about that regularly on this show. They were 5 miles an hour faster than Red Bull in the speed traps in race trim.
It was, in the words of Kevin Walsh, we don't call it the Honda Motor Company for nothing versus aerodynamics are for people who can't build engines.
What a fight.
Unfortunately, the Honda Motor Company won because well, there wasn't a whole lot that Sainz could have done. Either he drove to the tires and he gets passed earlier, or he butchers the tires and Max bullies him into a lockup, because that's exactly what happened. Right. I mean, Max probably could have forced the issue earlier on, but that probably would have resulted in another instance of Turn 1 Monza Rule 34.
No exceptions.
Nose down, gearbox up. But instead, he waited.
Yeah, like, it's just... Well, you could, like, Max is still, like, he is driving at such a level where, like, I don't know if you guys remember this, but, like, lap 4 of the race, where Max is back in Sainz's DRS range. He's watching Sainz from a distance, and he just goes on there and he goes to GB and he just goes, yeah, I could already see Sainz sliding around on these rear tyres. It's only going to be a matter of time. And he just sits there and waits for the mistake to happen, and it did. Lap 15, locks up into turn 1, locks the fronts, opens the door on the exit into the Curva Grande, and that was it. Game over.
You just got to be perfect to beat this dude. You got to be driving above perfect to beat this dude.
Well, it wouldn't have mattered, because he drove up behind Sainz and more or less just forced him to... He was either going to use up his tires or lose the position. And Sainz chose to use up the tires. And that's a choice that Ferrari made. Their only play was track position. And even that wasn't enough, because when Max got by, oh my God, he dropped him out of DRS in about a lap.
Yeah, we were screaming on our Discord as we were watching this race. Box Leclerc, force Red Bull. Yeah,
they couldn't. They didn't have a slot to put him into. Leclerc and Sainz would have been bounced out into traffic around the Haas's.
It's brutal because
they had no play.
It was brutal because you're screaming at him, because Sainz was 8 tenths a lap slower once his tyres were gone and Max was in front. Like, it went to show you just how far over the limit Sainz was going just to stay in front. And by the time that Max got by, Max, knowing how good his tyre wear is, he could have gone as long as he wanted before going onto the hard tyre. They brought the softest compound tyres to Monza, thinking it might just be a two-stopper, and it still wasn't a two-stopper at Monza.
It could have been for some of them, but it was never going to be for the Red Bulls. And same deal with Perez. I mean, I don't think Ferrari had a play to keep second, because Perez just went barreling towards them near the end of the race.
Yeah, to be fair, and to Perez's credit, this was probably his best race weekend he's had since Baku. That was a very solid bit of race-based work from Perez there. He was competitive. He was fast enough. Yeah, the stat sheet looked a little bit better for him because Max was nursing a car issue towards the end of the race, which brought him to within 6 seconds. It was in hand for Max, but that was a better weekend. That's the sort of weekend where if Checo keeps doing that, he's not going to have a problem. It's that simple.
That's all he has to do.
Yeah, it's all he has to do.
They need the happy medium between the guy who's going to be so fast that he's causing problems in the team, because we all know where Red Bull's bread is buttered.
Of course.
And between the guy who is, barely scoring points in the car.
Right.
Because there's been way too many instances of Perez this year not making Q3 in that thing.
Yes. And, qualifying still a bit ropey, but Perez did what he needed to do. Got past Russell, got past the Ferraris, took a comfortable second. Can't ask for any more than that, realistically speaking. So fair play to him on that one.
A side note, we almost had the climax of the Hans arc, where those two Ferraris went to war for the final position on the podium.
Oh, that was fun.
It was fun right up until the point where I saw Leclerc lock up on the final lap and nearly run Sainz over. And that would have been the end of the Hans arc.
Can I just say, Fred Vassar is my favorite team principal in Formula One, because Fred was watching that and just said, let them fight.
I wouldn't go that far, because they got a pit message down the main straight going, no risk, let's carry to the end. And then Leclerc immediately almost locked up into Sainz.
What's the French for? Risk! As he hits the brakes going into the final lap and then almost goes into the back of Sainz and takes them both out.
No risks to the end. Cowabunga it is.
Hey, now that is future Monaco Eurovision representative Charles Leclerc.
Oh, another thing he can qualify first for and then lose.
Yeah, like Monaco are now eligible for the Eurovision Song Contest, and apparently Charles was like, "I'm ready," which I thought was great. And, that was great content right there from Charles.
Ooh, where is the French representative joining us from? I can't tell. Is it Paris?
Might be the Eiffel Tower. Yeah, I hear it's in Paris. But yeah, like, props to Fred for letting them fight. I love that. It was great entertainment. And I'm glad that everybody enjoyed it. Like, even Leclerc was like, that was really fun. I don't think the Tifosi enjoyed that as much as I did, but they enjoyed it. And Sainz said, look, Sainz was incredibly kind. He was like, look, it's a privilege to be able to fight Charles on track when we get a chance to. It doesn't happen very often, but when it does, it's a privilege to be able to do it. And I'll be real with you. I watched the replays. I do think Sainz went over the limit in defending that, but the stewards, they're not going to clock you for a teammate clash. That's just generally.
Maybe they will if it's Ferrari and Monza. If you crash the other Ferrari off, maybe you will get in trouble.
Because Piastri hit Norris in that race as well, and the stewards are like, fuck it, let it go. We ain't touching this. So maybe it's a bit of that. But again, I already really like Fred Vassar. I've got a lot of time for him as a team principal. He's one of these no nonsense, no bullshitters. He always kind of tells it as it is, and in this game, that actually goes a lot further than you think. More on that very shortly. Yeah, props to letting them fight. You know, I actually liked their special Monza gear as well. I thought that was fun. A nice tribute to the brilliant Le Mans winning WEC hypercar team as well, which was very cool in general. And yeah, good for Ferrari. Like, look, this sport is more fun when Ferrari is good. I've said this 1,000 times. Ferrari taps into that emotion of being an F1 fan more than I think any other team does in this sport. When Ferrari is good, shit is more interesting. Give me more of that. And hey, don't look now. Ferrari's overtaken Aston Martin. They're now third in the Constructors' Championship. They might.
Whoop-de-doo. They now are merely 2 positions off where they should be with their resources rather than 1, rather than 3.
Look, a bird in the hand, Cam. Bird in the hand. You got to take these where you can get it, because Aston Martin were fucking nowhere this weekend.
Oh no, one Aston Martin was trying its best.
Alonso, that was Alonso's equal worst finish of the year in 9th, but we kind of expected that at Monza. Unlike Hungary, it's a draggy car. It was never going to do well at Monza.
On the other hand,
Lance Stroll was 1 minute and 27 off the win.
Lance Stroll is making it impossible to defend.
No, I agree. Like
he has been given in context, because we're going to talk about a driver later who at least has the excuse of being a rookie. I mean, look at Liam Lawson. Liam Lawson has been in Formula One for 1 race.
2 races.
He already looks better. 1.5. 1.5. Zandvoort was him in for 1 soaking wet session and a qualifying he had no prep for.
Did you see the dive he put in on Kevin Magnussen? That was
ballsy.
That was Daniel Ricciardo range. I was like, holy shit, okay. It's just like
I'm already like,
I'm impressed.
Do I already rate Liam Lawson higher than Lance Stroll, and it's been 1.5 races?
Bro, Cam, again, and we'll talk about this in the IndyCar special. #watch Super Formula.
#watch. It's more on that later. A lot more on that later. But yeah, Lance, bro, maybe it might be better if he takes up tennis.
Yeah, Liam Lawson was 11th on the day. This was his first full F1 weekend, and he was 11th and only, I think, 8 seconds out of the points. Brilliant effort, Liam.
Yuki deserved so much better. Not to make it
I need to give Yuki Tsunoda a hug, chocolate, and like a Super Nintendo loaded up with some F-Zero.
Just like give him a Super Nintendo with one of those EverDrives where you could just like load every Super Nintendo game on a 1 cartridge with an SD card.
No, because then you don't know what to play because you have too much to play.
Right, yeah, that's true.
everything for Yuki Tsunoda after the summer break has been a complete write-off. It
hasn't been on him.
None of it has been on him. Absolutely fucking brutal luck for Tsunoda since the summer break's come back. Because all this is doing is making his job security worse. Like, because Lawson is now, Lawson is as advertised. Like, the way it's going so far. You could not have asked for a better debut for Liam Lawson than he's got.
There's no way they could drop Yuki Tsunoda based on performance. If they do, Bulls Racing is on crack.
Well, if you ask certain people in our Discord, he's a dead man walking.
Well, that's the problem. We are now in a difficult situation where 3 into 2 doesn't go, because what was the point of bringing back Daniel Ricciardo if it was only going to be for half a season?
To see if he was good enough to stick around.
And it looks like...
To see if he's good enough for the Red Bull drive.
Because, again, they've lost faith in Checo. Because if they hadn't lost any faith in Checo, they wouldn't be entertaining this notion. But here we are.
They'll probably relitigate this again in a couple weeks. But we know we don't need to relitigate the fact that Max Verstappen is on the greatest individual run in the sport's history. 47th career win. 10 in a row. A new Formula One World Championship record. The 15th straight for Red Bull Racing as a team, extending their record. The longest record in any Formula One scenario. No Indy 500 asterisk required. That was good.
They're not just breaking records. They're wiping them out of the books.
Right. This is we are almost certainly now in the range of this is the greatest individual F1 season we've ever watched.
We're in range that they're going to do it.
Yeah.
They're going to climb over that fence.
A Singapore safety car might be the only thing that stops them now.
No, but if that happens, they'll just crashgate Checo in return.
Oh, yeah.
A soul for a soul.
Now, I feel like I've got to do some explaining here, because I wanted to mention this, because there's been a lot of petty salt beef and spam in a jar regarding this weekend. Now, going into this weekend, Lewis Hamilton did an interview with the Italian branch of Sky Sports, and he out of nowhere mentioned that his teammates were better than Max Verstappen's in their respective careers. Comparing, obviously, Alonso, Heikki Kovalainen. We don't forget Heikki around here. We're not doing Heikki.
We do not forget Super GT champion Heikki Kovalainen, or Jensen Button, for that matter.
Right. Jensen, of course, Nico Rosberg, and, of course, Valtteri Bottas, and now George Russell. Compared to Max Verstappen's set of teammates. So we're talking Carlos Sainz, Daniel Ricciardo, Alex Albon, Pierre Gasly, and now Sergio Perez. Verstappen, because I've said it many a time, Verstappen has never seen a fight that he feels like he can't pour some gasoline on. Called Hamilton jealous of his success and said, you should look in the mirror, and at some point you've got to acknowledge us like he's a white version of Roman Reigns in response to that. And then after the race was over, when Ted Kravitz kind of which I must admit is surprising for Ted Kravitz, because he took time out of his busy schedule of stirring the Abu Dhabi 2021 drum to ask Toto, well, you got to hand it to him for 10 straight wins, right? Right, Toto? And then he was like...
I got the quote right here. Our situation was maybe a little bit different, of course, referring to the Mercedes run of dominance in the last decade, because we had two drivers fighting against each other within the team. Well, told Sky Sports been asked about Verstappen's record after the Italian Grand Prix. I don't know whether Verstappen, cares about the record. It's not something that would be important for me, any of those numbers. It's for Wikipedia, and nobody reads that anyway. First of all, Toto, with all due respect, as a Wikipedia article editor and creator, you're wrong here. Us neurodivergent racing fans love us some Wikipedia.
Here.
Can I just say, hang on. Do you have any idea how down bad you have to be to reach the conclusion that actually winning is for nerds?
So that's basically what he was implying. Wikipedia is the seventh most...
Suckers.
Shout out to Luke Smith for pointing this out in my direction. I do respect that. I have a lot of time for Luke Smith, one of the best in the biz. Luke Smith of The Athletic said, Wikipedia is the 7th most visited website on Earth. It's in the top 10, and it's not number 10.
Maybe it was meant to be a compliment.
Like, Because you're implying that only nerds will look at Wikipedia to figure out the Max. No,
this is full of nerds. You know how many gatekeeping bros are just like, if you're not a diehard motorsports nerd, you don't even need to be engaging.
Oh, you're a real Formula One fan? Who's the first driver to win 10 races?
Jackie Chan. Wait, no, sorry. Father of the Year, Jackie Chan. Sarcastic father of the year in quotes.
Anyway. By that same logic, they really should stop caring about Abu Dhabi 21 because 8 championships is just a Wikipedia nerd stat. Do you realize how stupid that sounds?
It's ridiculous. This was the same weekend that Mercedes mentioned on social media this was Lewis Hamilton's 300th Q3 appearance. Somebody kept track of that.
And that's worth keeping track of because that's an incredible statistic.
Right.
All this is good. Like
let people cook.
You do realize that like Mercedes did a deal with Automobilista to literally sell a poster with all of Lewis Hamilton's career statistics when he won his 100th Grand Prix at Sochi in 2021, right?
At where?
The poster site, Automobilista, I think it's called something like that.
No. But where did he win that race in 2021?
Doesn't exist.
I don't know. Like,
but
I got some
this track was invented by a writer.
I got some more quotes from my friends at Race Fans about Toto saying, for me, these kinds of records are completely irrelevant. They're irrelevant in our good days of Mercedes. I don't know how many races we won in a row. I didn't even know there was a count on how many races in a row you win. Therefore, asking me for commenting on some achievement is difficult because it never played a role in my own life. It's yesterday, but the result itself shows that a great driver and a great car are competing on an extremely high level. I think they need to screw it up themselves in order to not win every race this season. That's a record that I would say is a good one because that is perfection. Okay, so he's saying that, like, a perfect season would be more impressive, and, like, yeah, no shit. It's a perfect season.
No done it.
Well, and here's the thing. You know, Toto's saying that's irrelevant because they never did it. They screwed up each chance they had the opportunity to do so. And it was on Mercedes. Through 2014 to 2016, the only races that they realistically lost to another team outdoing them were probably 2 of the 3 that Ferrari won in 2015. Malaysia, because they were burning out their tires too quick for their pace to matter, and Singapore, where they were just out to lunch all weekend. Allow me to set the stage here. Mercedes, you caused this. The political wrangling last year, we know Red Bull's cheating. We know how they're cheating. We've submitted it to the FIA, and the FIA are adjusting the rules. And that bullet went right between Red Bull's legs and through Ferrari's kneecaps.
Right.
Red Bull have won 24 of the last 25 since that happened. And the one they didn't, they screwed up the setup in Brazil last year. And Mercedes won, which, of course, gaslit Mercedes into keeping the 0 pods for this season, which has worked out swimmingly.
Yeah, that team...
It's your fault!
This is a team that's fundamentally botched this entire set of regulations from the start. They've gotten it completely wrong. They had to sacrifice Lewis Hamilton's season last year to try and fix the problem. They got a technical directive change for the middle of the summer break last year, and they've won 1 Grand Prix since then.
And you don't need a wind tunnel to see it.
All it did was cripple everyone but Red Bull.
Look, I've said this 100 times, and this is my personal take on all of this. Stats are important. Stats are cool. Stats help tell the stories of the legacies of these drivers that are so great and what make this sport what it is. I'm a huge Sebastian Vettel fan. Everybody knows that if they know me well enough to know that. You cannot talk about the legacy of that man without talking about the 9 races in a row he won at the back end of 2013. That is an iconic part of the man's legacy. It will likely never be forgotten because at the time we had never seen anything like it. Yes, half the field had half an eye on 2014. I'm not acknowledging or erasing that part of the story. But
it's more than pace, isn't it, Dre?
Of course, it's pace,
execution.
It's execution. It's luck to a degree. It's just strategy. You need so many things to go right. Formula One is a sport where there are 150 different ways you can lose a race, and there's only one way you can win one.
And
That's
in
the
this
nature of the
10-race
sport.
streak, Red Bull has had everything thrown at them despite their overwhelming car, which may go down as the greatest Formula One car ever devised.
They've had rain, they've had sun, they've had strategy goof-ups, they've
been on the back foot.
They've been on the back foot.
In Monaco, Aston should have had them dead to rights in the changing conditions, and Aston botched it, and Red Bull called it perfectly.
A bird was stuck in Max Verstappen's brake duct in Canada. You know, like, Silverstone could have easily gone another way if it rained a little bit harder. You know, like Zandvoort could have easily gone 15 different ways, given how spontaneous that rain was. Like, it takes, like, let's not forget, the other Red Bull, Sergio Perez, botched his race off because he was the first guinea pig into that wet zone. Yeah, that could have easily been Max.
It's not just the pace. And don't get me wrong, a faster car papers over a lot of cracks.
Sure.
But I've said it before on this show that knockdown, drag out, whether you consider it legitimate or not, 2021 title fight, it's honed Red Bull into an operational wrecking machine. While it's exposed, and they've exposed the weaknesses on the operational side of every other team on the grid.
Yeah. They have been perfect in their, virtually perfect in their execution.
Max had a sticky front left on his pit stop for this race. It was only a 2.7.
Oh no. What a hardship. what a struggle. No, this is the best F1 team in a single season we've ever seen. Yep. Without question. And honestly, and I say this as a man who I'm a huge fan of, Lewis Hamilton knows exactly what he's doing.
Of course he does.
And he's been doing, the thing is, right, I love Lewis, right, and a lot of Twitter people will think that I'm not, or that I don't like the man for this. Look, the man's made petty comments multiple times in his career. Yeah,
I've said it for years. Like, the worst thing you can say about Lewis Hamilton is that sometimes
he's a bad loser.
Many times he's a bad loser, and that's okay.
If the worst thing you could say about a guy is that they're a bad loser, they're a pretty good human being, is what I would like to think.
Don't sit there and tell me that something isn't happening when it is, because Lewis has more or less been making comments about this nonstop for the last year and a half, ever since we realized, actually the W13 is a dog.
Right, and Lewis knows better than this. Like, Lewis is 40 years old in just over a year's time. You are too grown to be coming out with these sort of petty statements, man. Like, yes, we know you've had hard opposition. We know you've had... I personally think, he's had the stronger teammates. No one's arguing with you there. But you've also got to acknowledge the fact that Mercedes and McLaren were all trying to build super teams. They were deliberately trying to go for best driver available. You look at the history of McLaren as a team. That's the way they've built themselves to be as a car. You could go back to Lauda and Prost and Senna, Coulthard and Hakkinen, Montoya and Raikkonen. You could go to Hamilton and Button, Hamilton and Alonso and Button. They've had brilliant teams. They don't have a general 1-2 driver policy. They haven't had that for a long time. Maybe only now with Piastri and Norris, and that's rightly so because Norris is brilliant. But for the most part, they've had 1-2 structures. Red Bull are the complete opposite to that. Like, Red Bull...
They are traditional Ferrari. You have one driver who gets all the focus, and the other guy is support. And that's always been the case with Red Bull.
Yeah. Do not get me wrong. It's not worked out for them in many ways and in many attributes over their brief history as a Formula One team. I'd argue it's done them more harm than good in some cases, like Daniel Ricciardo being alienated, the Gasly and Albon experiments, alienating Sebastian Vettel to the point of leaving the moment the car was not so good anymore.
Like, everybody, for years, everybody has thought, like, all this time it should be Verstappen and Sainz at Red Bull.
Right, and it never worked out because Sainz was too fast.
What would you think would be happening to Sainz right now if he was at Red Bull? Because the problem is right now, we talked about this in our Discord yesterday, you have a couple drivers who I think you could plug in, your Leclercs, your Hamiltons, probably Norris.
Sure.
Who would cause dissent in that team because they'd be too fast. Pretty much everyone else, I feel like, would get eaten alive by Max right now. It's it leaves Red Bull in a position where, I mean, there's rumblings that Perez wants to leave of his own volition.
Ooh.
Because he's the odd man out. And that puts Red Bull in kind of a weird situation of being overwhelmingly dominant, best driver, best car, best team. Who do they slot into that second seat?
I don't know. I think it'd be crazy. You know, one other thing that I thought about, it's been 25 years since Nigel Mansell was battling chicken pots and his substitute driver accidentally stumbled into breaking McLaren's perfect run in 1988. That was John Louis Schlesser, by the way.
It only took divine intervention from Enzo Ferrari's ghost taking the wheel of that Williams.
That's about the only thing that would interrupt a perfect season. Like, championships are settled. Like, I'm curious to see.
Red Bull can win the Constructors next race. They do have a win condition.
What?
Wow.
If they go perfect and Mercedes scores less than 2 points, they will win the Constructors title.
Bruh, it's September. I say this knowing that, like, yes, Michael Schumacher has wrapped up championships in July, but, like, come on.
That was also on a far more unforgiving point system.
Yes. But the fact that someone under the 25-point system with added points for sprints can win a title, a shortened season, let's not forget, because we didn't race in Imola. We lost 2 races. We didn't race in China either. We lost 2 races on the original calendar.
I don't know if we were ever expecting to actually race in China.
Well, it was on the calendar. It counts. We lost 2 races. This is meant to be a 24-race season. We actually ended up going down to 22. Because of Imola's cancellation and China getting chalked off because of their COVID policy. And they're going to win the title likely in September. What?
Yeah. 1, 2 plus fastest lap. And if Mercedes scores less than 2 points, they will be crowned Constructors next time out, which is just a statistical anomaly.
Right.
This whole season is a statistical anomaly. In summary, I feel like Mercedes should probably have their heads down and working a little bit more, considering how absolutely turbo-ass they were here.
If you want more thoughts from me on this, I wrote something about it on the WTF1 website. My DRE post is on that. And towards the end, I make the point that this is what happens when one team has won 24 out of the last 25 Grand Prix and the other team is actually having to do the chasing for the first time in a decade. Records are a lot easier to dismiss when you're not the one breaking them. And Mercedes knows exactly what it's doing. It's trying to fight a war using the press and using the most popular driver in F1 history as a shield because they know it's Lewis Hamilton and they should know better than is what I would say, because they know exactly what they're doing. And I think their comments come off as salty, to be honest with you. I'm not saying that you've got to go out of your way to be gracious or you've got to hand it to them. Of course you're not. But at the same time, just coming out with bullshit like it's just a Wikipedia record. If you would have gone 10 wins in a row, you'd have plastered it all over your social media, left, right, and center, because that's what you do to get attention and gain fans. We're not stupid. Do not take us for stupid, okay? We're intelligent fans, and a lot of us use Wikipedia to tell the stories that we tell. It's one of the most important resources we have.
We're not out here shilling for Wikipedia, by the way. We're not out here doing a pledge drive, by the way. We're just saying, yeah.
Hey, we use this. A lot of people use this. Most of the world uses it.
Yeah.
Don't piss on our heads and call it rain.
That's my line. Let's talk about Williams before we get out of here.
Now let's talk about the most upwardly mobile team in Formula One.
More points on the board.
Alex Albon went back-to-back in the points for the first time in his career as a Williams driver. 7th place on the day for Alex Albon. 6 more points. It puts them 10 ahead of Haas in the fight for 7th, which might be a game.
That is LeBrover.
That might be game in the fight for 7th right there, because they've got 21 points on the year. All 21 have come from Alex Albon. Haas are now 10 behind on 11 points. However, on the other end, Logan Sargeant finished 13th. He was running in the points for a good chunk of this race. He couldn't deal with Valtteri Bottas behind him, who was running the reverse medium strategy. Also, by the way, shout out to Bottas for finishing 10th, a priceless point for Alfa Romeo in their fight. It's
all in the livery, Dre.
It's all in the Alfa Stradale tribute livery, because as we say in this house, in life you bet on black. Anyway, with all that in mind, Sargeant finished 30th. He actually clattered into Valtteri Bottas while trying to defend against him and got a time penalty for his trouble. Ended up 13th in the end. Sargeant has just failed to score a point after 14 starts, where Alex Albon is crushing it right now in a Williams. Is it time to ask questions about the Americans' future?
I have the Race Fans article going over head-to-head teammate comparisons, teammate battles from this season. The Williams one's headline reads as follows: "There's no doubt where the most one-sided teammate contest is." And folks, I'll tell you that since this article was published after the summer break kicked in, it has not particularly got any better.
Double donut?
It's a triple donut.
Oh.
12-0 in qualifying, 9-0 in race results, now 21-0 in points scored. I don't have the laps ahead, but at the summer to break, it was 548-28 when both cars were running off the track.
Yikes.
Christ.
Dude. Okay. I said it like when we were talking about this earlier, like if Williams were still as bad as they have been at the absolute depths of this rebuild and retooling, like Logan Sargeant would probably get like more of a break. But like, this is good now. Williams is good.
They're no longer a better last because they're not last anymore.
No, clearly not.
Now there should be expectations on Logan Sargeant to score points semi-regularly, at least if not every race, then like every 2, 3, 4 races.
Yeah, I mean, look, like as James Valles has talked about, which said it before, we'll say it again. He is doing the Lord's work at that team.
It's been outstanding.
He arrived from Mercedes and described most of their facilities as at minimum 20 years old. They were rendering out their aerodynamics on a Power Macintosh G4, of which I own one.
For those who don't know, that's the Mac with the fancy colors.
Shout out to the GOAT.
Oh, that's post fancy colors, but pre-metal.
Oh, shout out to the GOAT.
But man, Alex Albon is him right now.
He's been fantastic.
Yeah. And that's another thing working outside of Logan's favor. It's just like teammates so
driving
good
out of his fucking skin. He's been one of the drivers of the year.
And the other rookies are doing fantastic. Like, okay, Nick DeVries didn't work out, but Lawson's been great. Lawson's been great in a small sample size, and Piastri over the season has been so good he's borderline overrated.
He's been the first person to give Lando Norris a bloody nose in the same car in quite a while.
Not since Carlos Sainz 4 years ago.
Yeah. I mean, the worst thing I can say about Piastri is that he doesn't always execute as well as he could.
He's a bit clumsy. But he's a rookie.
Clumsy, but also this race wasn't exactly his fault because Lewis Hamilton murdered this man in cold blood going into the second chicane.
He did apologize to him, though.
He did. Fair play to Lewis. He did come over and apologize.
He owned it completely. Fair play to him.
But yeah, like there's things that are probably making Sargent's time at Williams look worse than it actually is because at the end of the day, the dude's still a rookie. But that's just how it is when you've also got a rookie class that has been, DeVries aside, surprisingly strong this year.
Yeah, I can only echo the sentiment that you guys have come out with. Everything you could potentially put against Logan Sargeant has gone against him. Alex Albon is an established, really good driver who has got better part of 100 starts now to his name.
You have to think that he has like a well of experience relative to Sargeant because Albon's not been here for that long.
No,
dude, he was exiled to DTM after his Red Bull stint ended.
Right,
Yeah.
he was out for a year too. And like Albon has completely rebuilt his career via Williams, and he's picked up where Russell's left off. He has become the vocal point and leader of this team, and he's been outstanding this season. Like that's one thing that's gone against him. Albon has been better than advertised. Like, as you said, the rest of the rookies in this class outside of Nick de Vries have been brilliant. Oscar Piastri is exactly what McLaren has needed since Ricciardo was gone. And Liam Lawson, yes, limited sample size, has ticked every box you could put in for a stand-in so far. Like, you couldn't have reasonably asked for more than out of Liam Lawson than he's given you so far since he got here. That's going to make Logan Sargeant run out of excuses very quickly. Now, I would say this. I think Sargeant has had a couple of genuinely good races. I think Bahrain, he was excellent. He was only 8 seconds behind Albon on the road when he finished. I think it was 12th on that day. I thought, okay, there might be something here. But like he struggled after that. But then I thought, well, okay, let's go back to the tracks he did in Formula 2 and you think, okay, maybe he'd be a bit better there. He wasn't. Like Baku, he was dreadful, for example. And you're sitting here going, well,
beyond the pace, it's like he's made a couple of really clumsy errors. I mean, last time out, not in the race, that wasn't his fault. But in qualifying, I mean, he chucked the car at a wall. First time into Q3, just wiped the car out.
Yeah, it's not ideal. What I would say is that, and this is not Sargent's fault, the standard of driver is now so high in Formula One. Rookies are now expected to get a foothold immediately, otherwise they're going to be deemed as not good enough. Mick Schumacher was essentially one and done. Yuki Tsunoda's career is still hanging by a thread right now. Tsunoda, for me, I said this on Twitter yesterday, Tsunoda is the baseline of what a good rookie is supposed to be now in Formula One, because for the last 6 or 7 years, the rookies have become the integral backbone of this sport. Verstappen, Leclerc, Norris, Russell, Albon, Gasly, Ocon, Sainz.
And the previous two quote-unquote worst drivers in F1, well, Nikita Mazepin should have never been here. Right. Also, fuck that guy. And Latifi, nice dude.
Wasn't good enough.
Not really Formula One level. Now, at the end of the day, you like, for as much shit as gets talked about F1 drivers who don't perform up to standard, the worst F1 driver is still really, really good.
Yeah. That's the thing. It's like, I always feel like in most people's eyes, if you're not an elite Formula One driver, you are not fit to drive the parts delivery truck at insert auto parts store chain in your country here. But like, I've always said that, like, dude, the worst drivers of today would crush the worst drivers of your childhood, my childhood.
Oh, yeah.
Unless they drive an F2, which they might be right at home after this weekend. Mother of God.
Don't even get me started on that.
Don't even. I was going to say, like the standard is so goddamn high. And, like, look, Theo Pourchaire can't get in. Felipe Drugovich never had a prayer of getting in. Like, that's the level that we're at now, where dominant F2 champions, like, now are not guaranteed a place on the grid.
Oscar Piastri was not guaranteed a place on the grid, and he did the F3, F2 double in his rookie years in both.
Yeah, he had to sit on the bench for a year because he signed with Alpine, for fuck's sake.
Alpine Academy Common Success, baby.
Alpine Academy.
The worst driver academy in Formula One. Change my mind.
Right along to go with their power unit, because, man, that 35 plus that they're down was on display this weekend. Thanks.
Yeah. To put a neat bow on this, what I would say is that the unfortunate thing for Logan Sargeant is, if you're James Vowles, there's a really, really obvious thing you can do here, and that's give your old mucker Toto Wolff a call and say, what's it going to take to put Mick Schumacher back in a car?
Yeah.
It's easy. It writes itself. Everybody wins. Toto's gushed about how good Mick Schumacher is as a simulator and as a reserve driver. He said he would put Mick in one of his main cars in a heartbeat if somebody got I love the joke. He said avocado poisoning to Lewis Hamilton because he's vegan now, which I thought was quite funny.
Hey, don't joke about that. My partner, it has avocado allergies.
Oh, God, no. Fuck.
Oh, God.
We'll go back to fish poisoning, as he said in his original quote. But I'll say, like, the point is that Toto has gushed about Mick Schumacher, about how good he is and how he'll be good enough to drive one of his cars right here and now. If you want to get Mick back in a race car, you've got a technical partnership with Williams already. James Vowles is your old boy. You know he's going to be in good hands because Vowles was hinted at as being a future Toto successor. He's done 20 years at Brackley. He worked his way up from being an engineer to being head of Mercedes strategy. He knows how to run a team. I think he's actually hurt Mercedes by not being there anymore. His lack of presence has been felt at the Mercedes setup. And if you're James Vowles, knowing you actually have a car that can compete for points on a semi-regular basis and your other car can't score, you might not have the time to be able to develop Logan Sargeant as a driver anymore.
Yeah, help me help you situation.
Right, everybody wins. Like this is a mutually beneficial arrangement for everybody involved. Nobody loses here, except for Logan, unfortunately. And even then, Williams has got a loaded academy back there too. They've got Zach O'Sullivan back there. They've got Franco Colapinto, who was real close to the Formula 3 title last year. Zach O'Sullivan's a decent F2 driver. Look, they've got bullets in the chamber in their academy as well. It's stacked at the moment. In the next 2 years, they're going to be cooking for opportunities for some of their academy seat guys down there as well. So, like, Logan needs to step up and quick because, like, I'll put it this way. I heard Vowles talk about Williams. He was interviewed during Saturday qualifying on Sky Sports. He was very non-committal about Logan in the future. He talks like a dad, Vowles. I don't mean that in a bad way. I mean that in a nice, endearing way. But he was like, well, this is part of a project. We've got long-term goals. We've got long-term aims. Logan's got to develop and get... He was very... Like Lazenby asked him straight up, is Logan going to be in your car next year? And James couldn't give him a straight answer. It's a tough break, man. And I feel bad for Logan because I kind of like walking into that team with higher expectations than people thought, and Alex Albon being as good as he has been, he's a dead man walking. And that's it's really hard to get a foothold in that sort of scenario. It's very unfortunate, but that's F1 for you sometimes. And unfortunately, I can't think of a single good reason to keep Logan if Mick Schumacher is available. That's just the unfortunate scenario of the situation. Unless you're that confident that Mick's going to wreck some more cars, which like Guntersteiner thought so. I don't know. You tell me.
Well, given how that guy's running Haas right now, I don't think his opinion's worth very much.
Oh.
Surname Merchant, bro. Surname Merchant.
Oh, dear. Yeah, it's tough out here. Formula One is back in a week and a half's time at the Singapore.
We get a break. We get a little bit of a break.
Get a little break right into the race that usually breaks the 2-hour limit.
Yeah, hey, Singapore still with a 100% safety car record in going back to 2008 when it first got on the calendar. We've had a safety car every year. In fact, I don't normally come out with betting advice, but you can get 6-1 on there being no safety car at Singapore this year. Always worth a flutter. I always say it's always worth a bet.
You probably just got that stat off of Wikipedia.
Well, I don't think Wikipedia does gambling odds, personally. I'd be very concerned if it did. Personally, I'd be nervous if gambling odds were on Wikipedia, let me tell you. Right, next episode will be MotoGP on Catalunya. Oh boy, we got some shit to get through there. God help us all. That's not going to be quite as chirpy as this episode, but shit's got to be done. We'll see you for that episode. Until then, I've been Dre Harrison. They've been RJ O'Connell and Cam Buckley. Until next time, sayonara.
Later, y'all.
Still can't get that image after the race of the Red Bulls quite literally dancing on Ferrari's logo around the track on the cooldown lap.